on Moderate Voices, we're going to be discussing the recent, I guess you would call it a failure. I'm sure there's a lot of different people using a lot of different terms, but the grand old party, the GOP, the Republican Party, attempted to make good on their campaign promise, their election promise of repeal and replacing the Affordable Care Act. As of Friday, they decided to shelve this particular bill because they could not get the Freedom Caucus to vote with them, and without the Freedom Caucus, they could not muster the 216 votes to actually pass the bill. And to get the bill modified enough for the Freedom Caucus to vote on it, they would then lose moderate Republicans.
I think that's the more important thing to note here, is that there were lots of concessions made to the hardline Freedom Caucus that then the moderates bolted and would not accept. There was no middle ground that they would be willing to accept between the two sides of the Republican Party, let alone the Democratic Party, which wasn't going to change sides at all. I personally thought that that was the most interesting thing about this, and something that came out about it, I don't know if you've noticed, a Sean Spicer mentioning that perhaps Trump might work with the Democrats on making something happen.
Why would the Democrats work with him?
If he came to him with a moderate proposal, they might get to set the stage. They would entertain the thought if he could bring the moderate Republicans in line with them, because they want to. They realize the ACA is broken. It has problems. It needs to be fixed.
Yes, but ultimately their view is going to be, let's fix the ACA.
Well, that's what we now know is the moderate Republican view as well. They want to do repeal and replace implies fixing. The Freedom Caucus wants a full repeal. They don't want anything left, basically, of the original ACA structure. And that's ultimately what scuttled the bill, was that group of 40 or so people, 40 or so Republicans who were unwilling to accept anything other than basically a pure repeal of the ACA, or Obamacare, as most people call it.
Most people do call it Obamacare. Since we are not in a charged environment, I personally think any name that pretty much states what it is in Obamacare, everybody knows you're referring to the ACA.
Well, some people didn't know that at one point in time, but
kind of as Obama stated, it was his signature legislation. He has no problem with his name being associated with it.
Yeah, say what you want about it. He owned it. Trump never was willing to put his name on this piece of legislation, which should tell you something. Interesting rundown. The legislation that was put forward matched I don't only think in name only did it match any of his campaign promises. So I don't know why he felt the need to support it. He lost a lot of political weight on this, I think, and now you're looking into. I'm hoping that the quote unquote discussion with the possibility of talking to some Democrats is something he might do. Trump is a wild card. Maybe he might be willing to do something that fits more along those lines, because that fit what his campaign promises were more so than what the Republican bill did. His campaign promises were on keeping Medicaid expansion and
his campaign promises are keep everything good from the ACA, get rid of everything bad, and that won't work.
Well, that's what most people. You have to come up with some kind of a compromise situation, but the Republican bill that was put forth by Ryan and the general established Republicans didn't really do much of that. The only two things it kept that people considered good was the keeping your kids on until 26 and pre-existing conditions. The tax credit option wasn't the best in terms of how it was going to work out. I like to think, but in general, the failure of this bill to pass, I think, is a big thing says a lot about our Trump as president. He's not going to be very successful unless he's willing to actually do what he kind of wanted to say he did on the campaign trail, which was make some Republicans angry, and actually accept some of the things Democrats to try to make something happen. He needs to do that.
In other words, what it comes down to, are the Democrats better politicians than the Republicans? Because the Republicans, once Obama got in and the ACA got passed, they become obstructionists.
They don't really know how to do anything else.
Well, no, the thing is, if you're a Democrat, it worked. Right now, they control more seats in state legislation. They control more state governorships. They have both houses. They have the presidency. Their plan worked. Why shouldn't the Democrats do the same thing? Basically, force the Republican people who are in charge and go, it's on you.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm saying if Trump actually wants to make something happen, he can't follow the same roadmap that Obama followed. I mean, Obama followed a roadmap that didn't allow for any kind of... once it passed and Republicans went into a super obstructionist mode, he was unwilling to compromise on issues that weren't necessarily related to health care, but there are other things that he could try to do. I think Trump's going to, his budget proposal and his tax cuts, I think they're almost as dead on arrival right now, unless he's willing to do something different than as health care was. So we've talked about it, that taxes is even more complicated than that.
40 Republican representatives have more power because they will vote as a bloc than the President of the United States.
Yeah, right now, because because they will vote as a bloc. There's 40 of them. That's a good chunk.
Well,
it's because he can't sway any Democrats to join on. He needs to moderate. This is what we want to talk about. If he could moderate his vision,
but
where
the thing is, the Democrats as a party need to not do that as a party. How does he break that party? And because he has to break both parties. You can't get one party to sacrifice themselves for the better of the... Well, let's face it, politicians don't sacrifice themselves for the better of this nation. It's all about them. It's all about their constituents. It's all about their party.
Well, I mean, that's ultimately what I'm trying. I don't think he's going to accomplish his goal. That's why I don't think anything's going to happen. He has to find a way to make it where it's a win-win for the Democrats. And how that happens, I don't know. Basically, they have to make those 40 Tea Party people or some of the other Republicans look so bad in the fact that some of this other legislation passes that they lose their seats. Right now, those people aren't in danger of losing their seats at all. That's the problem.
Oh, they're not. And I don't think you can make them look bad enough for them to lose their seats.
That's that's a real possibility. I don't know.
They are from gerrymandered districts in which the people in those districts are going to vote for them again as long as they maintain that they are doing exactly what they say they're doing. And that the reason they're not voting for these bills is they didn't go far enough.
And the people that are in trouble here are not those 40 Republicans. It's the moderate Republicans who are going to lose their seats because the people in their districts are going to get fed up with them not being able to accomplish anything. And if the Democrats don't have a splinter group of 40 or 30 strong that show up in this time like the Tea Party did, they could in 2018 take back control of a lot of stuff with this type of process.
But no, the way that they take back control is by basically doing the same thing the Republicans did, saying, you're in charge, it's your bill, you pass it, and...
The thing is, though, if they get an offer that people feel is reasonably moderate, that they think they can make pass, is that not a win? No. Did they not just convert people to their side? Did they not just flip the president to being a liberal?
No.
Isn't that what they should look at to try to do, to try to actually win on these issues?
So how do you get the Republicans then to vote for that bill? I agree with you. If it's a liberal bill in which it's a win for the Democrats, how do you get any of the Republicans to vote? Perhaps
some of the moderate Republicans will. They're staring down a very dangerous spot, the moderate Republicans are. They're in districts where if they're in a moderate district, those people might get fed up with them and actually go with a Democrat in their district. Maybe they could
it's all down to the district. We don't... Just because they're a moderate doesn't necessarily mean they're in any danger of losing their seat.
That's true, but maybe it depends. I don't know. maybe there are some who are in danger that can flip over. That's what Trump and his team need to find. They need to find the 30 or 40 or so Republicans who could side with the Democrats to give them the power in the House on certain issues.
So you're saying
they exist? I don't know. That's not my job to find out. I'm saying it's his job to find out. That's his job. If he wants to actually accomplish anything on his agenda, he pretty much has to do that now.
So what on his agenda do you think he can go to the Democratic Party and go, can I get you to vote en masse? Because it sounds like what you think he needs to do is get the entire Democratic Party to vote with him on a bill, and then get however many Republicans he will need, which it sounds like it's less than 40.
It would be a little less than 40, yeah.
So he needs to get, however many Republicans and the Democrats to vote on a bill. What on his agenda that he has come out and stated that he
Actually, to be honest, healthcare. He could get the Democrats to compromise on the individual mandate. I don't necessarily think they might take some other stuff if he was willing to leave some other stuff in. Healthcare would be an issue where he could match many of the things he said in his campaign. They aren't that far away from Democrats. He could possibly get something close if he was willing to give up a couple things. And again, it's compromise. He accomplishes something. The Democrats keep ACA basically. They make it essentially. It is permanent now, but it is going to collapse. There's going to be some serious problems. They do realize it needs to be fixed. So he comes to them with an option of, let's fix it. You give me a little bit of this. I give you a little that kind of thing. Moderate Republicans fall in line on it. Enough of them do, and you get it to happen.
Unfortunately, the Republicans that fall in line will then lose their seats in whatever committee they're in. They will lose. I mean, you're talking about asking these people to sacrifice their political career for a vote on something that may or may not save something that's already, as you stated.
Well, it depends on what they come down to. I mean, there was a group of moderate Republicans who were unwilling to accept from their constituency, telling them that they were unwilling to accept what this plan was.
They will still lose their seats on committees. They will still lose their standing. They will still be kicked out of their positions of power within the House itself.
Yeah.
And what about our political party recently states that our politicians are men of sacrifice?
Nothing. I mean, I'm just throwing out there what if people were willing to work. But Trump's got to sell them on it. He's got to sell them on it, and it's his job to try to make them realize that this, and to try to make it in their best interest. It's not going to happen immediately that they will lose their spots on committees.
Yes.
If they do this, who knows what happens in the next election cycle?
No. It is immediate.
Well, they have to fill the spots with somebody.
The Republican Party goes, no, you're out.
Well, they have to go to some committee, and somebody has to fill their position. Who's going to fill that spot?
The people who didn't vote, the ones that were loyal.
So you'll have some shuffling of people.
Yes.
You're betting on down the line, ending up kicking all those people out. I mean, it's a gamble on the part of the people to do it, where you take real control of the House. I mean, it's an interesting situation.
So you actually, all right, let's just to sum up, and this is kind of my impression of where, because I did not think this is where you were going to go. You're thinking at this point, Trump's best play is to go to the is to get a bill that he more or less crafts that fulfills all of his campaign promises and stays as in line as possible with keeping the ACA. Even though he has stated his best plan is to let it collapse, to maybe float an idea to the Democrats and go, you can save it, but here's what you have to do.
You give me these three things. I mean, the individual mandate, that's going to go. That's going to go away. You come up with some other way to do this.
The only issue is if the individual mandate goes, the ACA is not funded.
Well, there's funding. That's an interesting question. You have to give up the tax breaks that they were given to the wealthy on it. But yes, I say he crafts a bill that he thinks might appeal to Democrats and moderate Republicans and goes, let's make this happen. Let's make these Freedom Caucus guys look like idiots.
But it doesn't make the Freedom Caucus guys by themselves look like idiots. It makes the Republican Party.
Well, the Republican Party already looks like a bunch of chumps right now. That's what you have to accept. They look like a bunch of chumps. They can't get crap done. I mean, the 8 years they've been talking about doing something, and they finally get control, and they can't do anything because they don't agree.
Okay.
And they're never going to agree at this point.
So, wrap up, Trump needs to go to the Democrats and make a bill and basically screw the Republicans.
Yeah. Whether it be on this or the budgets, he actually kind of needs to kind of throw these, and he's kind of said that. He said that he's going to go oppose the Republicans who opposed what happened on this. That would be the way to do it.
All right. And this ends this particular installment. So that's kind of what Chuck's opinion is of where things stand. I really have not been following it as closely, so I really don't have an opinion. And we will see you guys next episode.
See ya.